go, backed in, baby. Super smooth backed in. And I love doing that. Woo, baby.
We finally have the review of the 2026 Kawasaki ZX-6R. This is the 636cc bike, which is kind of like a cheat code. Instead of just 600, you get an extra 36 cc's, which puts out about 124 to 127 horsepower to the crank with 53 foot-pounds of torque. But the coolest thing about this bike, if you've seen the new ZX-10, all the aerodynamics in the wings, this has really aggressive styling, so right out of the box, it just looks mean and wants to go fast. But I'm a little guy. I'm 5'6", 140 pounds. It's very comfortable. You never feel like you're limited. You know, sometimes gas tanks can kind of block you from moving around on the bike. This gas tank's extremely shallow. As I sit on the bike, you can see, and by the way, at 5'6", getting 2 feet on the ground is like a huge success, so I'm stoked about that. But another thing, so obviously with 600s, you don't have that raw, massive horsepower of the 1000s, and that's why this bike is so great.
Okay, third in this turn. Kind of want to gradually get into it. Stay tight. Wait, roll, roll, roll. Yeah.
You know, we actually rode at a Buttonwillow circuit track and we got to a high 1 minute 46 second lap time on Dunlop Q5 tires. Now that's what's crazy. We're not on race tires, we're on street tires. You could ride this thing to the track, ride it to the track, ride all day, and then ride it home, all on this setup.
Look at that, no thumb on the brakes. Dunlop Q5s and a bone-stop motorcycle. Get back here. Now look what I'm able to do on this stock bike with fucking street tires.
The bike obviously makes great power, down low has great power, mid-range great power. Where does it hurt a bit? Because we're in California, all the Euro 5 emissions, and you gotta meet all those standards. So it makes great power down low, mid-range. Now, where does it lose power? For me, I was having to shift at about 14,000, 14,250, because once it hit 14,250, it really falls flat on its face. You know, it'll rev out, but you're not really moving forward anymore.
We got another race bike. Terrible line by me.
So I was short shifted at about 14,000 to keep enough torque and acceleration on the straightaways.
So I'm short shifting a little bit. Since it really falls off after 14,000 RPM, because I run wide.
And it ended up not being an issue at all. And then obviously the brakes. So I often don't like, actually not often, I don't like ABS. I think it's terrible. And I always encourage everyone, if you're at the racetrack, take the ABS off. I didn't have the opportunity to take the ABS off, but I had no issues. Yeah, I felt it at times, but I was braking quite hard, as you're gonna see from the clips, backed in, thing was sideways, and I had no issues as far as brake fade. I had lots of brake power. You know, would I replace anything? Pads, lines, and master cylinder, but I say about every motorcycle, regardless of how good it is stock.
So now the brakes on this bike, you know, they don't have a lot of bite. You gotta really squeeze on them pretty hard to get them to stop. Easily replaceable with some pads in the line. Let's talk about the chassis when I'm hard on the brakes. So I did stiffen up the suspension a bit from what Kawasaki recommended. Woo! To give me a little bit more support.
Now, talking about the chassis, it's a 600, they're all pretty nimble. This thing is extremely nimble. So I actually rode for Kawasaki in 2017. I didn't like the bike. I'm not gonna get into it, but this is not the same bike. So it has a lot of the same feel with the ergonomics and the way you sit in the cockpit. but the chassis is refined way beyond, I can't even compare the two. You know, previously I had a big issue with the Kawasaki. It would create a lot of chatter. If you're a rider and you put a lot of bar input to maneuver the bike and work the bike, it would just chatter and fight you and get very unstable. I had no issues with this, and that was on Dunlop Q5 DOT tires. No issues, it was extremely stable. And as you're gonna see in the footage, when I was backed in, I don't have auto blip downshift on this bike, but you work the clutch and you have a slipper clutch. So the thing was backed in very smooth. You didn't have to slip the clutch as it's backed in. So that's a huge advantage in my opinion.
Man, this thing backs in super smooth. So I do have it backed in pretty good a couple of the turns here.
Because if you're not familiar with the slipper clutch and the things you're downshifting on entry, the rear is going to be hopping on you, and you got to work that clutch to smooth it out. Not on the 636 ZX-6R. So kudos to Kawasaki, they did a great job with that. Now the transmission. A lot of times when you get to bikes with such a good price point, I mean, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure out the door you're around $10,000 out the door for this, which is insane, which is also why this is the best selling 600 in all of America.
Ooh, fast turn. Fifth gear down to third, right over.
So there's a reason for that. It looks sick. I love the green. Green is money, green means go, green means fast. But I definitely see why. I wouldn't say the bike does anything the best, but it does nothing bad. It does everything very good where it makes it a very balanced chassis. I don't feel like the weight balance is off as I'm on throttle or hitting the brakes. It's not pitching me too much. And I'm gonna give you a cheat sheet of all my settings that Kawasaki helped me come up with, and ChatGPT. I had to tweak it a little bit with ChatGPT. But very impressive bike. I would definitely encourage anyone that's looking for a super sport or a sport bike, and maybe you're graduating from an R3, a 400, I would definitely look at this motorcycle. You know, you have multiple rider aids. There's rain mode, sport mode, traction control to turn on, turn it off. I rode it in the fastest sport mode with no traction control, and the thing was planted the whole time. Great front feel, great rear feel.
We gotta play nice, we're a guest here.
But the coolest thing too is most stock motorcycles, they don't have proper suspension for support. You know, when you're hard on the brakes, I had plenty of support. Would I put aftermarket suspension on it? Yes, if I'm gonna go racing, but otherwise, I'm pretty satisfied with this.
What are you doing, dude? You just got passed by someone on a stock bike with the mirrors. Check out what the registration is, it's current, baby.
So the things I would do, just knowing about the emissions in motorcycles, an exhaust, an ECU flash, you know, maybe suspension depending on your pace, some brakes, some front brake stuff. That's kind of about it. The bike's pretty much good to go out of the box. It looks sick, it's super aggressive. I encourage you to try one out, as I did, but that's my review. If you get a chance to ride one, definitely try it out. You're probably gonna buy one. I'm Chad with Project Moto. Thanks for watching, y'all. That's what I think. Everyone's always curious, what are my suspension settings? I set the front preload, remember, start from all the way out and 13 turns in. Front compressions, start all the way in, and I was 1 turn out. Rebound, again, start all the way in, and I was 1.5 turns out. Now the rear, I did not change any shims as far as ride height, and I did not play with any of the preload adjusters. The compression from all the way in, half turn out, and the rebound all the way in and 1 turn out. So those are the settings that I rode on all day. We tweaked them a bit, and in my opinion, it had great support. You know, to have that much support from bone stock suspension, would you race on it? So that's my suspension settings on the Kawasaki 2026 ZX-6R. I'm curious what you do, so anyone that rides this bike, tell me what your settings are. Leave a comment and let me know, and maybe I'll tweak mine. I'm Chad, see y'all.